brutal truth about female nature never published. Centuries ago, a diplomat, cast into exile and stripped of his former standing, penned observations so profoundly unsettling about human nature that they were met with widespread condemnation. These writings were seen as dangerous, not because they contained falsehoods, but because they laid bare an uncomfortable, undeniable truth that challenged cherished illusions about loyalty, love, and inherent human goodness. The fundamental psychology he illuminated wasn't confined to politics or power dynamics. It deeply influences every relationship we navigate today, with partners, friends, family, and colleagues. Once these profound insights into human behavior are truly grasped, one's perception of others and even oneself will be irrevocably altered. A deeper understanding fosters a newfound clarity, protecting against the sting of betrayal because it reveals the underlying self-interested nature that quietly operates within every human heart, including our own. The very individuals who sought to banish these truths often unknowingly, or perhaps knowingly, practiced the very techniques described, all while projecting an image of operating from higher, nobler principles. This exploration delves into these unvarnished observations about human nature, moving beyond simplified or distorted interpretations. It seeks to illuminate the real patterns that explain why a trusted friend might vanish when support is most needed, why a partner's affection might wane as circumstances shift, why family support might come with unspoken conditions, or why colleagues might subtly undermine while outwardly appearing supportive. This isn't mere academic theory, it is a profound recognition of deeply ingrained behavioral patterns that have persisted for millennia and continue to shape every interaction we have. The critical question isn't whether these patterns exist, but whether we choose to perceive them clearly or remain comfortably deluded, assuming everyone around us is driven by purer motives than they truly are. This understanding, though potentially challenging, becomes an invaluable life skill, essential for effective time management in personal and professional spheres, guiding where to consistently invest one's energy and attention. A profound statement articulated by a historical observer who wrote from exile after enduring immense personal hardship starkly declares, "People are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, covetous, and as long as you succeed, they are yours entirely. They will offer you their blood, property, life, and children when the need is far distant. But when it approaches, they turn against you." It is worth pausing to truly absorb these words. Notice the instinctive resistance that often arises, the internal voice that dismisses such an outlook as overly cynical, insisting, "That's not true of everyone," or "I'm not like that," or "My relationships are different." This very resistance is precisely what the observer anticipated. He further noted, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." Humans possess an extraordinary capacity for maintaining public displays of loyalty and virtue, even while their private actions are primarily motivated by self-interest. What renders this observation particularly potent and far from mere cynicism is that the observer included himself in this stark assessment. He was not exempting himself as noble while condemning others as selfish. Instead, he proposed that all humans, himself included, fundamentally operate from self-interest, and that acknowledging this fact is the only viable path to navigating reality successfully and consistently. Developing the skill of honest self-assessment, though uncomfortable, allows for a more consistent and realistic approach to all interactions, thus optimizing personal investments of time and emotion. Consider a practical thought experiment to validate these principles. Reflect on your closest relationships, those individuals you believe love you unconditionally. Now imagine a dramatic shift. You lose everything: your financial stability, social status, physical appearance, health, inherent abilities, everything that makes you desirable or a beneficial presence to others. You transition from being a source of value to a perceived burden. How many individuals would genuinely remain? Be unflinchingly honest in your assessment. That candid, often uncomfortably small number represents the true measure of human loyalty. The others, those who depart, were present for the benefits you provided, not for your immutable core self. This perspective is not a judgment or condemnation. It is a straightforward description of human dynamics. By embracing this reality, one can finally construct relationships on solid, pragmatic foundations, rather than on romanticized illusions destined to crumble when put to the test. This shift in understanding is a crucial skill for long-term relationship consistency and effective emotional time management, allowing for the strategic allocation of energy to genuinely reciprocal connections. Decades of observing individuals under immense duress, amidst warfare, political upheaval, and moments where survival itself hinged on allegiance, led to the documentation of patterns so consistent they function almost as laws of nature. The fundamental principle at play in every human relationship is self-interest, even when participants genuinely believe their actions stem from pure love, unwavering loyalty, or altruism. This foundational truth transforms one's understanding of interpersonal dynamics. It doesn't imply that people are inherently evil or that love is non-existent. Rather, it highlights that human attachment is consistently, always rooted in what the other person provides. This provision can manifest in various forms: emotional support, practical assistance, social advantage, physical intimacy, financial aid, or psychological comfort. The crucial point is that it is invariably present. When this provision ceases, the attachment, more often than not, dissipates. Cultivating the skill of consistent observation in your own life will reveal these patterns in action, providing invaluable data for decision-making and ensuring your time and energy are invested wisely. Observe these patterns within your own experiences, and the insights become strikingly clear. The friend who vanished. Perhaps you shared a profound friendship for many years. Then, circumstances changed. You relocated, shifted careers, entered a new relationship, or simply became less fun as life presented its inevitable challenges. Suddenly, they become perpetually busy, unable to sustain the friendship. What transpired? You likely ceased providing the specific benefit that sustained their interest. Perhaps you were a source of entertainment, offered practical utility, or provided access to a desirable social circle. When that perceived benefit disappeared, so too did their consistent engagement. This illustrates the importance of understanding the underlying exchange in maintaining connections. The partner who lost interest. You experienced a profound connection, seemingly deep in love, with declarations of being everything to one another. Then you might have lost a job, experienced a period of depression, or failed to meet their needs in some fundamental, consistent way. The love that once felt eternal evaporated within months. What occurred? The implicit exchange that sustained the relationship became unbalanced. You might have been perceived as taking more than you were giving, and human psychology, inherently driven by benefit maximization, rarely tolerates such an imbalance indefinitely without consistent effort from both sides. The family member who only calls when they need something. Months or even years might pass without contact. Then a crisis arises, financial, emotional, or practical, and suddenly they remember your existence. Once the immediate crisis subsides, they disappear again. This pattern is far from an anomaly. It is often the norm. Even family relationships, which we are often taught are unconditional, frequently operate on less obvious but equally real principles of exchange. Maintaining consistent boundaries around such interactions is vital for preserving your own well-being and managing your time effectively. The colleague who became distant. You might have shared a close rapport at work, but then you transferred departments, they received a promotion, or your respective career paths diverged. The camaraderie that felt so genuine faded almost immediately. Why? Because the friendship was primarily sustained by shared proximity, common professional interests, and mutual benefit within a specific context. Remove those consistent factors, and the relationship often lacked an independent foundation to endure. A shrewd observer of human dynamics, reflecting on these scenarios, would calmly ask, of course, what else was expected? Such an individual would recall observing that leaders who believed their subjects loved them personally were often shocked when those very subjects welcomed invading forces promising improved conditions. The love was never about the leader's intrinsic self. It was consistently about what the leader provided. Your personal relationships function in much the same way. The affection isn't solely about you as an immutable entity, it's intricately linked to what you provide. The moment this critical insight is understood, the sting of perceived betrayal lessens, as it becomes clear that individuals are merely acting according to their nature when the beneficial exchange ceases to serve their consistent self-interest. Acquiring this level of discernment is a powerful skill that saves immense emotional time and energy. To effectively navigate these complex dynamics, it's beneficial to break down the specific mechanisms at play. These foundational patterns operate beneath every human relationship, whether consciously acknowledged or not. Truth 1. People stay for benefits, not just bonds. A historical text noted that people's affection is guided by their own will, while their respect is shaped by the consistent demonstration of strength and adherence to boundaries. This distinction is paramount. Affection is often a feeling people experience when you provide them with consistent benefits. Respect, however, is what individuals demonstrate when you have consistently proven that you will not tolerate poor treatment. Many individuals mistakenly conflate these two, leading to confusion and hurt when those who claim the deepest affection treat them with the least consideration. In romantic relationships, a partner's continued presence is often less about shared history or an abstract bond, and more about the relationship consistently fulfilling their needs better than available alternatives. The moment this delicate calculation shifts, perhaps they encounter someone offering what you provide plus an additional benefit, or you cease to consistently provide what made the relationship valuable. History can quickly become irrelevant, and the connection may dissolve. This perspective might seem harsh, but an honest examination of one's own past behavior often reveals similar patterns. We naturally drift from friendships, lose feelings for former partners, or abandon hobbies when the perceived cost consistently outweighs the benefit. This isn't inherently malicious, it's a fundamental aspect of human behavior. The question then becomes whether one accepts this reality or persists in the delusion that one's own affections are somehow purer. Developing the skill of self-honesty and consistently evaluating the reciprocity in relationships is vital for managing emotional time effectively. In professional contexts, an employer retains an individual not primarily out of personal affection or loyalty for past service, but because replacing that individual consistently costs more in terms of money, time, knowledge loss, or organizational disruption than retaining them. The instant this cost-benefit analysis inverts, the individual's position becomes precarious. This is why long-tenured employees can be let go without hesitation when budgets tighten or priorities shift. Years of loyalty, personal sacrifices, or going beyond the job description, while valuable, often become secondary when the consistent economic benefit changes. Understanding this reality prevents the profound disillusionment of realizing an employer's interest was never truly personal. This insight enhances the skill of career planning and strategic time management, ensuring consistent value delivery. Even within family relationships, which are often idealized as unconditionally loving, principles of exchange are frequently at play, albeit subtly. Parents who consistently provide financial or practical support might implicitly expect caregiving in their later years. Siblings who shared an unbreakable bond in childhood often drift apart when their lives diverge and the consistent mutual benefits of proximity or shared experience diminish. Family members who consistently take more than they give often find themselves gradually excluded from family gatherings or decision-making. The exchange might be less overtly transactional than in the workplace, but it is an exchange nonetheless. Family members who consistently violate this implicit bargain Those who take without giving create more problems than they solve, or demand support without offering it in return, often find themselves marginalized, regardless of blood ties. This profound understanding shifts one's perspective from emotional hurt, "Why did they betray me?" to a strategic analysis. What was the consistent exchange that sustained this relationship, and what factors led to its change? This analytical skill is crucial for consistent personal growth and effective relationship management. Truth 2. People constantly test your boundaries. Here, the observations become eminently practical. It was noted that people rarely act altruistically unless necessity compels them. The core observation is that humans instinctively probe boundaries to discover what they can get away with. When confronted with firm, consistent resistance, they tend to respect the boundary and the individual enforcing it. However, if they encounter weak or non-existent resistance, they naturally push further. This behavior isn't always conscious malice. Often, it's an unconscious expression of behavioral economics. Humans are naturally wired to conserve energy and maximize personal benefit, which often translates into a subconscious tendency to take more and give less, until they encounter consistent consequences that render such a strategy unprofitable. Developing the skill of consistently enforcing boundaries is a profound act of self-respect and excellent time management. Observe this pattern in the relationships around you. The friend who routinely cancels plans last minute. They are testing whether you will consistently enforce consequences or simply tolerate it. If you continually forgive them without any cost to them, they learn that they can disrespect your time without penalty. Why would they alter this behavior? You are effectively teaching them that your boundaries are negotiable. Protecting your time requires consistent action. The partner who speaks to you disrespectfully. They are testing whether you will tolerate such behavior or establish it as unequivocally unacceptable. If you engage in arguments but ultimately accept the disrespect, you have implicitly taught them that this behavior yields results. They can vent frustration on you without fear of losing you. This is a costly service you are providing at your own emotional and psychological expense. Consistently upholding respectful communication standards is a key relationship skill. The colleague who takes credit for your work. They are testing whether you will challenge them or let the transgression slide. If you allow it to pass even once, they have learned they can consistently benefit from your efforts without sharing the credit or rewards. Rational self-interest dictates they will likely repeat this behavior. Consistently, asserting your contributions is vital for professional integrity and skill recognition. The family member who only contacts you when they need something. They are testing whether you will maintain the relationship despite its consistent imbalance. If you continue to give without requiring any reciprocity, you have taught them that one-sided taking is acceptable within this dynamic. This drains your time and emotional resources. The fundamental mechanism identified is that humans respect boundaries that are consistently enforced, not merely boundaries that are stated. You can articulate your expectations and limits endlessly, but what truly matters is what you actually tolerate when those boundaries are tested. This is precisely why individuals who are perpetually accommodating, always forgiving, and eternally understanding often find themselves treated worse over time, not better. They have, through their consistent inaction, inadvertently trained everyone around them that poor treatment carries no discernible consequences. Conversely, the individual who establishes and consistently enforces clear boundaries, who is prepared to disengage, create tangible consequences, and truly means what they say, commands consistent respect. It was wisely suggested that it is more effective to elicit respect through consequence than through affection, because respect rooted in consistent outcomes is less dependent on the fluctuating feelings or circumstances of another person. Affection may vanish when convenience dictates. Respect for your boundaries will persist as long as violating them consistently costs more than it benefits. This strategic approach to relationships demands the skill of consistency and careful time management. The uncomfortable but empowering application of this truth is that any relationship in which you feel chronically disrespected or taken advantage of is, in fact, one you are consistently allowing. You are inadvertently teaching people through your actions or inaction that they can treat you in such a manner without losing access to you. The moment you implement real consistent consequences, reducing contact, withdrawing support, or ending the specific negative behavior within the relationship. Behavior often changes immediately, or the individual will naturally self-select out of your life. In either scenario, you achieve a positive outcome by no longer tolerating poor treatment. This process of setting and maintaining boundaries is a crucial life skill that, when applied consistently, significantly improves the quality of your relationships and protects your valuable time. Truth 3. Attraction wanes without strategic distance. A profound understanding of power dynamics, directly applicable to personal relationships, posits that absolute accessibility diminishes value and total transparency often eliminates intrigue. Ancient wisdom advised leaders to cultivate an element of mystery, to maintain a degree of unpredictability, and never to be entirely available or completely knowable. In contemporary relationships, this principle operates with surprising ruthlessness. The individual who becomes completely available, utterly transparent, and entirely merged into another's life often ceases to be perceived as a distinct, intriguing entity worth pursuing. Instead, they risk becoming a mere utility, something to be accessed at will. Developing and consistently maintaining a rich, independent life is a critical skill for sustaining attraction and managing your time effectively. This dynamic frequently explains why the spark in romantic relationships can diminish significantly after the moving in together phase. The issue isn't proximity itself, but rather the common response to increased proximity. Many individuals, perhaps unconsciously, eliminate all aspects of their independence. They share every detail, become constantly available, and merge their entire identity into the relationship. What inevitably happens? The mystery evaporates. The person who was once intriguing becomes completely known and predictable. The individual who was once actively pursued becomes perpetually available. The separate individual effectively becomes an extension of the other, and extensions, by their nature, are not typically attractive. They are perceived as utilities. Observe how this manifests. In the early stages of a relationship, both individuals typically possess full, vibrant lives. They have distinct friends, cherished hobbies, personal goals, and dedicated time apart. They share selectively, maintaining an element of mystery. The relationship thrives on excitement because it involves two complete individuals consciously choosing to share their valuable time and experiences. However, as the relationship becomes serious, this often shifts. One might gradually abandon old friends, forsake cherished hobbies, share every thought and feeling, become available 24/7, and effectively dissolve any life existing outside the relationship. The transformation is profound. From an interesting, autonomous person whom their partner chooses to spend time with, to an individual whose entire existence appears to revolve around the partner. The predictable result is often a decline in interest. This isn't necessarily because the partner is shallow or cruel, but because the very elements that fostered attraction, the sense of a complete person with a rich, independent life who chooses to include them, have been systematically eliminated. The same astute observer noted that a leader who granted audiences to anyone who asked became less respected than one whose time was known to be valuable and scarce. Similarly, in relationships, the person who is always available becomes taken for granted. The individual who consistently maintains a healthy scarcity of their time and attention, who consistently invests in their own development and interests, remains valued across all relationships. This pattern extends beyond romantic dynamics. The friend who is always free whenever you call. risks becoming the default backup friend, contacted only when more preferred options are unavailable. The professional who consistently responds to emails at 2 a.m. inadvertently teaches others that their time has no boundaries, leading to constant intrusions. The family member who consistently accommodates everyone else's needs often finds their own needs perpetually deprioritized. Strategic distance is not about playing manipulative games or being artificially unavailable. It is fundamentally about consistently maintaining genuine independence, cultivating a life rich with diverse interests, passions, and priorities that exist robustly outside of any single relationship. This consistent self-investment makes you inherently interesting because you are not merely a reflection of the other person. You are a distinct, complete entity worthy of engagement. This is a basic power dynamic. The person who truly needs nothing from a relationship, who consistently possesses a full and meaningful life, holds a degree of inherent power. Conversely, the person who is desperate for a relationship, whose entire well-being hinges on it, possesses little. By consistently cultivating independence, emotionally, socially, and practically, one avoids the desperate dependence that can diminish attraction and inadvertently invite poor treatment. Mastering this skill of self-sufficiency leads to unparalleled consistency in personal well-being and prudent time management. The mechanism of respect. Now we arrive at an ancient observation often famously misunderstood. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. The common misinterpretation fixates on feared and misses the profound underlying insight. The full reasoning, as articulated in historical texts, explains: love is preserved by the link of obligation, which, owing to the baseness of men, is broken at every opportunity for their advantage. But fear is maintained by a dread of punishment which never fails. In simpler terms, people's affection for you is contingent on you consistently benefiting them, making it inherently fragile and susceptible to shifting circumstances. However, people's respect for your boundaries is far more reliable because it is founded on consistent consequences that do not fluctuate with their fleeting feelings or changing situations. This insight is not an endorsement of intimidation or threats. Instead, it is a deep understanding that respect, built upon consistently enforced boundaries, provides a far more stable foundation for relationships than affection alone, especially when that affection is tied to benefits you provide. This requires the consistent skill of assertive communication and follow-through. Consider the practical distinction: the person everyone loves but consistently disrespects. Such an individual is constantly taken advantage of. People enjoy their company but rarely take them seriously. Commitments are cancelled without guilt, favors are requested without reciprocity, and boundaries are ignored because there are no discernible consequences. This drains their time and energy. The person everyone respects, even if not universally loved. This individual is consistently treated with consideration. People might not always seek their company, but they uphold commitments, reciprocate favors, and respect boundaries because violating them consistently produces consequences. In professional settings, a manager universally liked for being perpetually nice and accommodating often receives the least respect and poorest performance from their team. Conversely, a manager consistently respected for being fair but firm often achieves superior results even if they aren't as personally popular. The skill of consistent fairness and firmness fosters productivity and manages team dynamics effectively. In personal relationships, the individual who is always forgiving, always understanding, and consistently gives endless second chances will, over time, often be treated worse. In stark contrast, the person who consistently enforces clear boundaries, saying, "Do that again, and I'm done," and crucially, following through, commands consistent respect. This requires unwavering consistency in self-respect. The core mechanism identified is that humans consistently respond to incentives. If poor treatment of you carries no consistent cost, you should anticipate more poor treatment. If poor treatment consistently carries significant costs, reduced access, withdrawn support, or the termination of the problematic dynamic, you can expect better treatment, or for individuals unwilling to change to self-select out of your life. Both outcomes benefit you. You either receive improved treatment, or you naturally remove individuals from your life who are unwilling to treat you well. What is demonstrably unbeneficial is tolerating poor treatment indefinitely, idly hoping that people will choose to treat you better out of the goodness of their hearts. The observer understood that hoping people will consistently act against their nature is a recipe for perpetual disappointment. Structuring relationships such that an individual's self-interest consistently aligns with treating you well is, conversely, a potent recipe for sustained success. This strategic approach is a vital skill for consistent personal well-being and optimal time management. The transformation protocol for enduring relationships. Intellectual understanding of these truths, while a crucial first step, is insufficient on its own. The wisdom articulated was not mere theory, it was a documentation of practice forged through intense, often bitter, lived experience. To genuinely apply these insights and transform relationships from sources of pain and confusion into wellsprings of strategic benefit and mutual growth, a conscious, consistent protocol is required. This is about acquiring and consistently applying vital life skills for effective time management. 1. The relationship audit. Undertake a thorough and brutally honest review of every significant relationship in your life. For each connection, ask penetrating questions. What tangible and intangible benefits does this person consistently receive from me? What benefits do I consistently receive from them? Is the exchange genuinely balanced, or is there a noticeable imbalance where one party consistently gives significantly more? This introspective audit demands the skill of objective self-assessment and allocates your time and emotional energy more efficiently. For relationships identified as imbalanced, where your consistent investment far outweighs your returns, you have 3 clear, actionable choices, each requiring consistency and resolve. Reduce your investment. Deliberately scale back your contributions to match what you realistically receive. This is about aligning your consistent effort with the actual reciprocity. Renegotiate the exchange. Initiate a candid conversation to explicitly redefine expectations and responsibilities, striving to restore a mutual balance. This requires consistent communication skills. End the relationship. If balance cannot be achieved or sustained, conscientiously redirect the energy and time previously spent on that connection towards relationships that are demonstrably reciprocal and healthy. Many resist this audit because the truths it unearths can be profoundly uncomfortable. You might discover that individuals you believed cared deeply are, in fact, consistently leveraging you. You might realize that substantial emotional investments in certain relationships have not been reciprocated. You might confront the uncomfortable truth that you have consistently, albeit unwittingly, volunteered for exploitation by adhering to romanticized notions of unconditional loyalty. Despite the discomfort, execute the audit. Discomfort that leads to clarity and consistent, realistic action is infinitely more beneficial than comfort that perpetuates exploitation and wastes your valuable time. 2. The boundary establishment and consistent enforcement. For every relationship you choose to maintain, clearly identify what behaviors you will consistently accept and, critically, what you will unequivocally not tolerate. Be specific and unambiguous. Then, and this is the most crucial step, determine the exact, tangible consequences that will consistently follow if a boundary is violated. The consequence must be something you are genuinely willing and prepared to enforce consistently every time. Stating, "If you do X, I'll be upset," is not a consequence. It is merely information that will be consistently ignored if upsetting you carries no meaningful cost to the other person. real effective consequences sound more like this. If you cancel on me without significant notice one more time, I will no longer make plans with you for the foreseeable future, and then you actually follow through. The person who consistently establishes boundaries but fails to enforce them has, in effect, consistently communicated that their boundaries are meaningless. Developing the skill of consistent follow-through is paramount here, safeguarding your time and mental peace. 3. The independence maintenance. Actively and consistently cultivate a rich, fulfilling life that exists robustly outside of every single relationship. Have friends who are entirely separate from your partner's social circle. Pursue hobbies and passions that do not involve your family. Cultivate professional goals and interests that are not solely dependent on the support of any single colleague. This practice is not about formulating backup plans or strategically keeping options open in anticipation of betrayal. Rather, it is about consistently maintaining your identity as a complete, self-sufficient person, rather than allowing yourself to become a mere extension of others. Complete, autonomous individuals are inherently attractive and respected. Extensions, on the other hand, are often taken for granted and, eventually, discarded. Consistently investing in your own growth and development is excellent time management, building enduring personal value. 4. The respect optimization. Consciously cease trying to be universally liked by everyone. Instead, focus on consistently earning respect. The distinction is critical. Being liked often involves consistently accommodating others' preferences, even when they conflict with your own values or needs. Being respectable, however, means possessing clear, consistently upheld standards and adhering to them, regardless of whether others approve. Paradoxically, consistently demonstrating self-respect and clear principles often makes you more liked by the kind of people truly worth knowing. As such, individuals are naturally drawn to strength, integrity, and consistent values. The people who consistently dislike you for having boundaries were, in all likelihood, never worth accommodating in the first place. This is a skill in discerning healthy connections and managing your social time effectively. 5. The exchange consciousness. Abandon the pretense that your relationships operate purely on abstract love or unconditional loyalty. Instead, begin consciously and consistently managing the underlying exchanges. This approach does not render you manipulative. It makes you realistic and strategic. Consistently ask yourself, what value am I genuinely providing in this relationship? What value am I consistently receiving? Is this exchange sustainable over the long term, or is it depleting my resources? What would be the consistent outcome if I were to cease providing my side of the exchange? Relationships that consistently survive this candid analysis are genuinely worth continued investment. Relationships that fail this analysis were, in all probability, consistently exploiting you anyway, draining your time and energy. Addressing common counter-arguments. At this juncture, one might instinctively think, this perspective is far too cynical. It eradicates genuine connection. Not all relationships are transactional. I'm not like this with the people I truly love. Let's address each point with clarity and a focus on reality, consistent effort, and skill development. This is too cynical. True cynicism involves believing people are inherently worse than they actually are. Realism, however, is the consistent practice of seeing people precisely as they are. The observations discussed are not cynical. They are profoundly observational. They document consistent, verifiable patterns of human behavior, not abstract theories. If these patterns feel cynical, it is perhaps because human nature, when stripped of romanticized notions, is often less noble than we prefer to consistently pretend it is. Cultivating the skill of objective observation without personal judgment allows for consistent realism. This eliminates genuine connection. On the contrary, this framework actively enables genuine connection. When you cease expecting naive, unconditional loyalty and begin building relationships on the bedrock of honest, consistent exchange, you forge connections rooted in reality rather than fragile fantasy. The friendships and partnerships that consistently survive this realistic approach are the ones that are truly authentic and enduring. Those that do not endure were, in all likelihood, never truly genuine to begin with, saving you consistent emotional investment in futile endeavors. Not all relationships are transactional. Challenge this assertion directly. Can you consistently identify one human relationship that is entirely devoid of implicit or explicit exchange? Consider your closest friendship. What would be the consistent outcome if you became a perpetual emotional or practical drain with absolutely no reciprocal benefit? Consider your romantic relationship. What would happen if you consistently ceased to meet your partner's needs entirely? Every human relationship, without exception, involves some form of implicit exchange. Acknowledging this fundamental truth doesn't create the exchange. It merely brings it into conscious awareness. Consistent denial, conversely, does not eliminate its pervasive influence. I'm not like this with people I love. Yes, you are. You simply might not consistently recognize it because society often teaches that admitting self-interest in relationships is somehow shameful or antithetical to love. Yet, if you honestly examine your own behavior, you will consistently find that you remain in relationships that benefit you more than they consistently cost you. You naturally drift from relationships that consistently cost more than they benefit. You consistently invest more time and energy in people who consistently invest in you. This is the natural manifestation of self-interest. It is a normal, healthy, and functional aspect of human psychology. Consistently pretending otherwise is a form of self-delusion that ultimately leads to preventable pain and inefficient time management. The ultimate freedom. The profound truths consistently observed centuries ago offer an unparalleled gift: freedom from naive victimhood. When you consistently understand that humans, by their very nature, operate from self-interest, you cease to be perpetually shocked by betrayal. You stop being consistently hurt by individuals acting in accordance with their inherent nature. You stop consistently expecting others to sacrifice their interests for yours, especially when you, in a similar situation, might not consistently do the reverse. This understanding does not render you heartless, it consistently makes you strategically astute. You can still care deeply and genuinely for people while consistently recognizing that their loyalty, however profound, possesses inherent limits dictated by circumstances and their own self-interest. You can still cultivate incredibly meaningful and deep relationships while consistently ensuring that those relationships serve your interests as much as they serve others. The individual who consistently understands these fundamental aspects of human nature is uniquely positioned to forge relationships that not only last but also consistently thrive, precisely because they are built on a bedrock of sustainable, mutual benefit rather than on fragile, romanticized fantasies that inevitably crumble under the pressure of reality. Conversely, the individual who consistently denies these inherent human patterns will continue to be blindsided by predictable outcomes, patterns that would be entirely obvious to anyone who consistently grasps the timeless observations documented centuries ago. The choice is unequivocally yours. You can continue to consistently believe that people operate from nobler motives than they actually do, thereby setting yourself up for perpetual surprise and hurt when they consistently act according to self-interest. Or you can accept these unflinching observations about human nature and consistently employ them as a robust framework to build relationships that genuinely work because they are anchored in reality rather than fleeting wishful thinking. This is a journey of consistent self-education and skill acquisition. The individual who articulated these truths, though he passed away in exile, impoverished, and condemned by the very people who were secretly practicing his principles while feigning moral superiority, left behind a legacy that endures. His name became an epithet, his work initially suppressed, yet His observations about human nature have persisted for half a millennium because they consistently describe reality with an uncomfortable, piercing accuracy. People are inherently self-interested. Loyalty is consistently conditional. All relationships in their essence are exchanges. Boundaries consistently determine respect. Complete, unwavering availability consistently erodes attraction. These are not moral judgments. They are consistently observable patterns that operate regardless of whether one chooses to acknowledge them. You have the option to reject these truths and continue to consistently operate from naive assumptions about inherent human goodness. Many people do, and they are often the ones consistently wounded by betrayals they never anticipated, shocked by people acting in alignment with their nature, and perpetually confused when their consistent loyalty is not reciprocated. Or you can choose to embrace these truths and consistently utilize them to construct relationships that genuinely serve and uplift you. You can consistently identify the rare individuals whose self-interest authentically aligns with supporting and championing your well-being. You can consistently establish boundaries that command genuine respect. You can consistently maintain the independence that ensures you remain attractive and valued. You can consistently cultivate exchanges that are mutually beneficial and sustainable, rather than remaining in one-sided arrangements that are inevitably destined to collapse, wasting your precious time and emotional energy. A historical map of human interaction has been provided. The underlying territory has remained remarkably unchanged for over 500 years. Whether you consistently choose to use this map or continue to wander blindly is entirely within your control. Historically, leaders who consistently understood these deeper principles of human nature built lasting empires. Leaders who naively believed in noble sentiments and ignored the underlying dynamics were often overthrown and swiftly forgotten. In your own life, consistently understanding and applying these principles is the profound difference between being consistently used and being consistently respected, between being abandoned and being truly valued, between naive victimhood and strategic, enduring success. Welcome to reality. It may be less comforting than the fairy tale, but it is the only terrain upon which real, consistent, and lasting success is truly possible. Acquiring the skills to navigate this reality consistently is the most valuable investment of your time.